Hello, my loves. Today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories, and if you've enjoyed a Reddit story, why don't you consider hitting the subscribe button? Maybe that's the notification bell too, and let's start with today's story. My wife cheated with my best friends while on vacation. I accepted all her retribution offers, then divorced her. In all the time I was talking to Eric, I still had not gotten a call back from Chrissy. I called 2 more times and then just said fuck it and sent her a pic of her and Mike kissing. The return call was immediate. I didn't answer. She kept calling and I kept ignoring. Eventually she switched to text. The first text was as cliche as it gets, I can explain. I sent back, don't bother, I already got the whole story from Eric, tell your trashy little friend he has divorce papers for her. Just like you will come Monday. At that point I blocked her number. Chrissy came into the house frantically at about 1:30 a.m. She immediately broke down in tears and tried to hug me. I blocked the advance and she began apologizing profusely and begging for forgiveness. I told her to save it, we had a lot to talk about. I wanted every question answered 100% honestly. If I thought she was lying, I would end the conversation and file for divorce on Monday. I had tons of evidence and was not afraid to show the world who she is. I then asked her, what do you want? She said she wanted to show me how sorry she was, she wanted to work for forgiveness, and for us to work past this. I told her I didn't think that was possible, but would let her explain herself. I asked why she cheated in the first place. She said she had a lot of fun that day, was feeling good and relaxed. She hadn't felt that way in a long time. Work had been so stressful for so long. She let the moment, the drinks, take over and just went with it. She tried telling me how terrible she felt after, but I cut her off. I said, okay, not condoning, not forgiving, but that only explains the drunk sex you had the first time, it doesn't explain the rest of the week. You weren't drunk when you were fucking him 3 to 4 times a day the rest of the trip. Probably weren't too drunk when you fucked Eric, then went and had sandwich sex after. She looked at me with tears and said, when in Rome. I replied, are you fucking kidding me? That's it. She started again, well, let's be real, what's the difference between 1 time and a 100? You'd still react this way, once I had already fucked up, was there really any difference in stopping or not, would you feel different? I was in a fantasy land, and just embraced it while I was there. I never intended for you to find out, and I never intended to do this again. I wish I could take it all back. I was despondent, that's the most terrible thing I've ever heard, she just said, you asked me to be honest. I asked if she was unhappy, if she was tired of me, if I didn't do it for her anymore. She said no, I love you, I'm happy, all the usually crap. That we have a good marriage, she just wanted to feel wild, feel excited. We had gotten somewhat monotonous, and this experience was exhilarating. Her plan had been to have this much sex with me, but when I didn't go she at first thought well that's out, but once it was available she let herself get taken by the moment. I asked about the swapping. She said that was a huge mistake. Emily had talked to her about that on the last full day, and about how they were trying an open. Emily said it's perfect because she isn't even giving up Chuck, just Mike. She admitted to being curious about Eric. Mostly though she kind of felt obligated, if they were going to cover, this was kind of payback, and a way for them to have something riding on the secret as well. I asked about this weekend. Asked why she agreed to that if she was so sorry about betraying me the first time. Chrissy said she never intended to step out of line again, and swore she was gonna make the most of our relationship going forward. I now think about the months following the vacation in Wretch. She had been talking with Emily like usual, and Emily just seemed like she was having the time of her life now that she was open. Chrissy admitted to being a little jealous. Emily had been with several men and Chrissy was living a bit vicariously through her. When Emily started the affair with Mike she knew what she was missing out on, and became more jealous. For the record, I know Mike had a rep in college for being a ladies' man, and if I'm being honest, was the best looking of the 3 of us. He had managed to stay the most fit as he aged, and that had only improved post-divorce. Chrissy said when the threesome got proposed she really tried to stay strong and not get drawn in, but as the weeks went on she found herself just thinking about that. She told me she caved because the spontaneous one had been really good and honestly thought she could get away with it. At that point she asked how I figured it out, and I said I didn't have to answer that. I asked her if there was anything else and she said no, she just wanted a chance to earn trust, forgiveness, and to reconcile. I told her I didn't believe that. I mean, come on, 16 years totally faithful, then total porn star with my two best friends for a whole week. She swore, offered her phone, laptop, old phones, old email accounts. I said, no, I don't need all that, because it doesn't matter, you've done enough that I know about already. I am hurt, betrayed, and can't stand to look at you. I am done, and I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. When I woke that Monday morning, Chrissy was still home. She usually was on her way to the office, but had taken the day off, anticipating I had done the same thing. Once Cora was off to school, she began her love bombing. I told her I didn't care, I'd already seen all this before. She said she had a proposal for me. All access to her, all of her stuff, all the time, marriage counseling, she would go to individual counseling, cut off Emily, Mike, anyone I wanted permanently, and she would be an open book at all times for any questions. I said those are just things you do when you are trying to reconcile. I don't want to be a warden at home and I don't want to reconcile. She begged and pleaded, and asked that I just wait just a week, and if next Monday I still felt the same she would sign no matter what, no contest. I looked at her and said, you swear to that, if I wait a week we will have totally uncontested divorce, no dragging it out at all? She swore. I agreed to the 1-week trial, seemed worth the risk. If she just signed and agreed, that would save us both time and money. If she was lying and still fought the divorce, well, it was just one awkward, terrible week I was losing. She continued to love bomb and consistently tried initiating sex. I rejected these usual efforts, and on Thursday night told her I was not moved in any way and still planned to file on Monday. She broke down and ran into the guest room until the next morning. Friday after work I could tell she had something in mind. I really didn't care, I was literally counting the hours until I could be rid of her at this point. The love bombing was not working, and I was actually getting annoyed with her overzealous efforts. She said she thought we couldn't go on because of the imbalance that her infidelity had caused. I wasn't sure at first if she was implying what I thought she was implying, but she was. Chrissy said we should have a threesome. I said you did more than that. She said okay, and you can have a week off marriage too. I pointed out that was worthless, I just heard all about Eric's disastrous open marriage. I'm a guy, and unless you're a rich guy or a famous guy, you're not picking up women that easily, especially as a mid-30s already married man. There's no point in me sitting in bars for a week or on dating apps not getting matches. She said okay, you can have 10 hall passes that never expire instead. That can be the same woman or 10 different. I replied, you think that's not gonna impact our life, you're gonna be okay with that? I doubt it. She said she won't let it suffer, she will make a huge effort to be available for all of my needs, and we can do anything I've ever wanted. I know that what I did next was sleazy, maybe not as bad as what she did, still sleazy though, but at the time, I didn't really care. I made it clear that I wouldn't let these concessions just be a way to stall. If she wanted me to stay, then these things needed to happen sooner than later. I wanted the threesome to be her priority. I said she needed to have at least someone agreeing by February 1st, or I was out. I don't know how she found her, but in the week between Christmas and New Year's she showed me a picture of a woman from her spin class. She was gorgeous, and I couldn't believe she found someone that quick and someone so attractive. Tiffany was 24 years old. Her and Chrissy had been chatting at Spin for months, but nothing past regular small talk. I asked how, and Chrissy just said she had her ways. My assumption was she offered her money. About 2 weeks later was the big night. I made it a point to make sure Chrissy was fully involved and didn't feel left out. I mean, I still had my fun, but I knew this would make Chrissy think we were on the right track. I wasn't wrong. She told me how she only did this to try and win me back, but that the whole experience was actually amazing. Prior to that, I had been cashing in on her obligation of being overtly sexual with me. After the threesome, it stopped feeling like she was just meeting an obligation. She seemed excited to be with me and to try new things. Although, I think a part of it was her hope that I would abandon the hall passes. Mid-February, I took the first plunge into using the hall passes. There was a 27-year-old restaurant manager, Sabrina, close by my work. I had frequented it often and always thought she was a little flirty with me. I asked her out. I told her I was 2 months into my divorce proceedings. Not true. I said we were still living in the same house, but that I had moved into the basement. Also not true. Sabrina seemed hesitant but agreed to the date. Later on, I asked her what made her agree, knowing my situation, and she said she noticed the first time I came in without my wedding ring. I took it off after I caught my wife, and since by the time I asked her my tan line was fading away, it meant I wasn't just taking it off to meet women, but not wearing it at all. During all of this, Chrissy had been pushing that we start marriage counseling. I stayed steadfast that I wasn't interested in doing that until I had used all my passes. By April, I had seen Sabrina 7 times. That really tore Chrissy up, and while today I regret doing this to her, at the time I felt justified. As I began to run out of my passes, I came to realize I was more and more interested in pursuing something official with Sabrina. I decided it was time to stop pretending to reconcile. I also think I had hurt Chrissy enough. She was too. I still feel heavy guilt for this today. When I said it didn't work, and I still wanted to divorce, she didn't fight me. She was sad, she seemed defeated, but she didn't fight it. I found a small 2-bedroom house and left Chrissy in our family home. When I sat Cora down to tell her we were divorcing, I told her the appropriate amount of truth. I didn't put all the blame on her mother, and owned up to my own behaviors during this. I focused on letting her know we both loved her and wanted the best, but we both wronged each other and had to separate. The 3 of us decided that 50-50 custody was best, so she alternated week to week staying at each other's place. It took until October for the divorce to go final. I dated Sabrina the entire time. Cora and her got along fine. I was happy Cora didn't see her as the other woman or anything. They never had a step-parent vibe or anything, but were friendly in the way a child is with their parents' friends. My relationship with Sabrina lasted about 2 years. It ended because I don't want to marry again, or have more children. Chrissy had done some sporadic dating over the last couple years, one guy she was with for about 11 months. Then something weird happened this past spring. We have co-parented pretty effectively through all this. The one thing we both wanted was to be there for our daughter. We've been amicable through all of her events and for her sake. When her high school graduation hit, we ended up sitting by each other. What should have been awkward just wasn't. We started joking around, talking, got a little flirty. It was refreshing. A week later, I was still thinking of the fun I had at graduation. I decided to call Chrissy and ask her out. She said, absolutely not. This caused quite the swell of embarrassment. Luckily, that was only temporary. After a long pause, she continued, unless we start couples counseling. I agreed. We had our first session on a Thursday, and our second first date on that Friday. It's been 6 months since that graduation. We are still doing counseling, dating, and have also started exploring the concept of alternative lifestyles. Gonna take that slow. Things are going well. Chrissy even brought up the idea of me moving back to our family home. Cora can't believe we are getting back together and says it's weird. She told me when she got back from her first semester at college last week that she wasn't sure if she was happy or concerned. She just knows for sure she doesn't want any details of any kind in regards to any of our exploits. Eric divorced Emily and ran for the hills. He put in a work transfer and now lives 4 states away. Mike and Emily tried to make a real relationship work for about a month after her divorce. Chrissy got back in contact with Emily after ours, and learned that pretty much sex was the only thing they had in common, and it fizzled out pretty quick. Emily remarried a guy that used to work with Eric, and the company moved him when he was promoted to a regional manager spot. He is now Eric's direct boss, which I found hilarious. Little did the guy know though, Eric and Emily started having an affair behind his back. I say did because someone tipped that guy off, probably out of spite, and now he's out for blood from both of them. Motherfucker Mike, as I refer to him, is still around and still single to this day. He got jumped one night after coming out of a local bar by some masked assailant. Rumor has it he was beaten up pretty good and may have gotten kicked in the balls 12 times. I don't know what the future holds from here, but today, I can't complain. I'll be sure to update the masses if it ever gets interesting again. Until then, thanks for reading. Story: My classmate's dad caused a lockdown at school. Hi. For this story, I think it's important to include context of what my school was like. It was a pre-K to 8th Catholic private school specifically targeted towards Latinos to improve graduation rates of this community, and the religious aspect was just thrown into it because one of the founders was a nun or something. Despite being a private school, it wasn't exactly the most ideal school. A lot of public schools were actually in a better condition. To paint the picture, my old school was the school where high schoolers came in to volunteer for service hours, and where Girl Scouts raised money to donate bikes and winter jackets to the elementary students. It wasn't located in necessarily the best area, which means we went into lockouts quite frequently. Mostly due to crime around the area or one of the nearby druggies yelling and getting aggressive. However, there were rarely any cases of the school itself being in direct danger. There was once a bomb threat a substitute made years ago, but that was one case over a course of 20+ years that place has been going for. Though, in 6th grade there were 2 lockdowns. The first one wasn't anything special really. A woman under the influence of drugs was basically trying to get into the school. Most likely to steal, as she has been able to sneak in and rob some items before. However, it was mostly precaution when we went into lockdown. After it was over and the woman had been arrested, staff members like school counselors had gone to classes and explained the situation calmly. The second lockdown, however, was very different. That one was actually terrifying. One of the girls at that school who I had known about since kindergarten had often complained to us about her dad. It wasn't unusual for kids to grow up in abusive households or vent to each other about their parents/family. She was no different. She obviously hated her dad and talked about how shitty he was towards her and her mom as well as her older sister, who was in 8th grade at the time of the lockdown. During the first few months of 6th grade she had been talking about how insane her dad was acting, such as breaking into their home while they were away and wrecking the place up. He was toxic and that was obvious to anyone she told. Well, while I was in Mexico for my cousin's quinceanera, my mom received an email that the school has gone into a lockdown. My mom was dismissive about it when I asked, and her being a teacher at that school, I'm sure she assumed it was a similar incident to the first lockdown that had happened just a few months ago. This was in February for reference. Once I got home around a week later, that girl was not in class. And some of my friends had rushed over to me, wanting to explain immediately what had happened. Apparently, her dad had gone to the school looking for that girl and her sister. What's unsettling is that he had been running from the cops after kidnapping that girl's mom and torturing her, as well as stabbing her uncle. And after that he was on the run for a while. He was arrested. I believe he was charged with assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, kidnapping, burglary, assault, strangulation, assault, disfigurement, motor vehicle theft, and stalking. The girl and her family moved away and I haven't spoken to that girl in person since. From what I know she's doing a lot better, but nobody from my school has really stayed in contact with her. Regardless, knowing that such a dangerous individual was meaning harm came to a building full of children is scary. Story: Ultimate revenge on my cheating girlfriend and boss. So basically 5 to 6 months ago my girlfriend cheated on me with my own boss. It was terrible and soon became the most embarrassing thing of my life. I worked at a supermarket and with everyone's boring lives it soon became the talk of everything and really made me struggle mentally. Key things I'll add before I explain why I took revenge out on him. My boss was in his mid-40s, married with children, and would boast about cheating on his wife to the workboys, with the way he would describe his main tactics as trauma bonding. My girlfriend had BPD and was easily manipulated and persuaded by him to receive fake promises and promise to faster promotion. We are both 20 to 21, so basically I set up a fake Facebook profile and acted on it for a week or two before I joined the local community page, doing post and responding to comments he was interacting with. I made it out like I was a newly single mom and new to the area. After 1 month, before getting his attention, I slid into his DMs and started messaging him and flirty with him. I already knew a lot about him in terms of hobbies, interest, and sporting teams, so I made everything easily relatable to form a strong, trusting connection. I had him hooked. I had him moved over to Snapchat and started catfishing him with photos from online, and exchange he started sending me nude photos exposing it all. I saved them all in my chat and left them there to build that trust. I also let HM do the same to the photos I sent. After I had enough to ruin him late, I changed my username and name on both platforms to a younger female staff member who used to work at the shop and screenshotted everything. I saved over 20 photos of what he was sending me and lodged a complaint with HR for the company. I even faked a Gmail email to make the user more believable, and when they called me on the phone, I had a female friend take the phone so it sounded very legit. Work for a large company, so you have the option not to do it in person. I also sent the screenshots of our messages and sent the nude photos of him cheating and sent them to his wife, his mom, and his sister. I truly wanted to ruin this man. I wasn't done then. I printed a bunch of posters with "Best Chewbacca impersonation wins $100" with his phone number listed below. I couldn't imagine how many phone calls he would have received. Anyways, to date, I have been told he currently has been terminated from the job from people inside the shop, and that he is also judging off the conversation with his wife on FB. She has kicked him out. I do not feel one bit of guilt at all. Maybe I'm psychotic, but nothing can describe the pure hatred I have for that man. As for my ex, she tried to get back with me, but I have left her in the dark and I'm much happier without her. I won't be seeking any revenge on her. Story: husband cheated on me. I'm at a loss and don't know what to do. I just feel completely empty inside. My husband travels a lot for work. He's usually gone about half the month or sometimes more. He confessed to me last week that he has been struggling with watching porn while he's gone and he wants to get professional help. He wanted me to know to have my support. Last night, he told me it wasn't just porn. When he was on a work trip to Vegas, he was watching porn and one thing led to another. Long story short, I guess whatever he was watching piqued his curiosity and he ended up reaching out to someone on Reddit and got a blowjob, and it also happened to be a dude. Honestly, I don't even care about what that could possibly mean. The gender of the person matters much less to me than the act itself. This happened 3 weeks ago and he just told me. We've been together for 4 years and have 2 kids, a 1.5-year-old and a 1-month-old. He's willing to do whatever it takes to stay together and fight for us. He has appointments for therapy already, and we're going to start couples therapy too. I don't know what I'm looking for in here. Building trust back feels impossible right now, but I want to try for our babies if nothing else. I know what advice I would give to someone in my shoes, but it hurts too much to think about right now. I'm just so angry at this entire situation. I feel fucking crazy. I'm so mad at him for ruining my vision of our entire future. Story: he cheated on me with his friend's mom. This isn't about my most recent ex, but this breakup was the one that started a long cycle of bad breakups. When I was 19, I met his guy Jackson on Tinder. He wasn't my usual type, but he was kind and funny, and we immediately hit it off. Things were really good between us, well, until they weren't, lol. Jackson started making offhanded comments about my looks, my weight, and things of that nature. One time we got into an argument because he called me fat, and instead of apologizing he sat on the floor and cried to me about how he was insecure about being black and how at least I could change my weight, but he'll never be able to change his skin color, so there's that. He would get mad at me over the smallest shit and block me on everything. He'd tell me how he didn't care about me but was just using me to validate himself. He'd say that if he ever cheated on me I would never find out about it. He even threatened to unalive himself at one point. One time I found lipstick in his car and asked him about it. I wasn't accusatory or mad because I knew that it could belong to his mom, his sister, or one of his female friends, but then he proceeded to tell me that he didn't know where it came from and that he didn't know anyone that wore lipstick. Another time I found a photo of another girl in his wallet and he swore that she was just a friend. Spoiler alert, it was his ex. One night he wasn't answering his phone and I had this ominous feeling in my stomach that something wasn't right. I've never ever been the type to look through someone's phone or social media or anything like that, but this night I did. I signed into his Snapchat and found out that not only was he cheating on me, he was cheating on me with his friend's mom. They were sexting, planning their next meetup, talking about him spending time with her son and her husband, talking about her sex life with other people, telling her how he didn't even like me, talking about our sex life with her, and she was even giving him tips on how to please me. I confronted him and he told me that I was psychotic, a leech, disgusting, and worst of all, that my dead dad would be so disappointed in me. My dad had died that same year. I'm not sure why I'm sharing all of this here, but it feels nice to get it off of my chest. Story: My neighbor Daisy. Okay, so my family and I had moved to the States briefly in the late 90s, early aughts, won't say when exactly, but around those times, because my grandfather was going to get his pension, retirement and other stuff set up, so the point was that we went and rented a house. So yeah, we stayed there for about 1.5 years or so as my grandpa transferred all his paperwork and such. I didn't go to school in this time and I spent a lot time playing outside, and that's where I met Mrs. Daisy. She was a lady that lived alone next door to us. Mrs. Daisy was a widow, had 2 adult sons that were horrible emo, and unfortunately she was also an alcoholic. I would see one of my older cousins I called uncle go over all the time and he would get plastered and stuff with her. I am sure drugs were used as well, but whatever, I was young and I liked this lady BC. She would give me toys, cookies, and sometimes even played with me. One day she gave me a doll that would sing Ring Around the Rosie. To say I loved this doll was an understatement. I adored this doll, and my neighbor Daisy ended up telling me that doll reminded her of me, so she thought I would love it and take care of it. I was excited. I thanked her 100x over and I slept, played, ate with this doll religiously. I still used to see my neighbor and try and play with her in her yard with my doll, but shortly after she had given me that doll, I saw less of her and saw my uncle go over more and more. I will admit I was a nosy kid. I knew the times my uncle was leaving the house and getting back, and he hated that BC I would tell my grandparents when they asked and he would lie to them. Anyways, I knew that sometimes he was at her house by 7 a.m. and he would come home until maybe minimum 1 a.m. the next day. I assume now they were having binge drinking parties, but I missed my neighbor and was sad I never really saw her as I used to, and since I wasn't allowed to go to her house I used to just wait by the fence that separated our driveway and her porch. But then one day, I saw the cops and someone take a stretcher out with a white blanket over someone.
Everyone in the neighborhood was outside. That's when the news spread that she was found dead by one of her sons. Then I remember my grandparents were talked to by some detectives. Also my uncle told me that I wasn't allowed to say that I saw him at the neighbors all the time before the cops had talked to my grandparents. I was so sad about my neighbor I stopped playing outside and just had my tea parties with my new doll inside the house. Now, after this day my uncle's drug and alcohol habits got so much worse. Like, I can't say everything here BC, it's so traumatizing just remembering what he put me, my other uncles, my grandparents, and even my mother through when he spiraled out of control. Now with my doll you had to hold her hands to make her sing. I wasn't allowed to make her sing around my uncle. BC, he would scream at me stuff like, why the fuck does she sing like a demon? Or tell my mom that the doll was possessed and sang another song, although she only sang the Ring Around the Rosie song.
I then started to have night terrors from all the stress with my uncle, but when I had the doll they seemed to ease. So this doll would be with me even more so, but it started to end up in odd places every morning. Like one day after I looked for her, she was right outside my uncle's room door. I grabbed her as quickly as possible and took her with me to the room I slept in with my mom and grandma. The one person who noticed all of this but didn't say a word was my grandma. This was an unspoken secret of the doll mysteriously disappearing on me and just appearing close proximity of my uncle, whether that was outside his room or if he was passed out drunk on the couch. Then one night this all came into a head. I woke up, my uncle was having a manic episode under the influence of God knows what. He was screaming at my doll, he had her in his hands. My grandfather was telling him to settle down or the cops would be called, but my uncle was so out of it he struck my grandpa. When he did this, my grandma took me to the room. I was sobbing. But when I tell you all of this was chaos, that just what describes this night so well. My grandma and I were locked in the room. Another uncle that was present attacked my manic uncle and my mom attacked him as well, so my grandma and I could hear my grandpa trying to stop them fighting, and amidst of all of this, guys, I could hear my doll singing. It was so odd and terrifying. My uncle took my doll apart. I saw her remains on the ground after my grandma and I got out the room, but the music box wasn't completely destroyed, it was stuck on the lyrics and we all fall down. It repeated it over and over again. Finally that night we packed what we could and my grandpa took me, my mom and my grandma to a Greyhound station and we made our way back to MX. My manic uncle was taken to the hospital BC of the injuries he sustained, and my other uncle went to jail, taking the blame and not letting my mom or my grandpa take that hit. Now, as an adult, my crazy uncle has passed. Can't say he became a good person, he still was and is my biggest tormentor for many reasons. Anyway, I brought up this memory with my mom. BC, I loved that doll and I have considered buying her, but she's considered vintage lol. But during this convo she revealed that after the neighbor was found dead, my uncle had an insane amount of money. Like over 10K, he told everyone this money had been the settlement money of when he was shot in the ear. That's a crazy story of its own. But my mom always found it suspicious. BC, this money came to light after the neighbor had been found dead. Also, she told me that the neighbor had died from an accidental drowning. Apparently she had a really high alcohol level, and had taken a large dose of painkillers, her autopsy had revealed. My uncle had told everyone in our house that he hadn't gone over to see our neighbor Daisy, that he had went out and gotten drunk at a bar close to our house. That was absolutely not true. BC, in true fashion of me being nosy, I remember hearing him sneak back home around 1 a.m. and he come from the back where her area connected. Our neighbor Daisy was found by 9 a.m. that day by her son, and the reason why the son went over was BC mom had made a very large withdrawal from her bank and the son wanted her to tell him what she was doing with that money since he had access to her accounts. Look, my mom and I can make assumptions all we want, but we will say that my uncle had been the last person to see her alive, even though he refuted that to authorities and my grandparents. I know I saw him come home from her house. And I guess we'll never know what truly happened that day to Mrs. Daisy. But I will never forget the doll singing those lyrics and we all fall down over and over again. BC, that is what happened to my uncle's life. He fell horrible and did horrible things, and those caught up with him. Story, humans are weird, I just can't anymore. My name is Lily, I'm a 19-year-old female. I was sexually abused from the age of 8 until I was 13 years old. I told my parents when I was 15, and they confronted my abuser, who is the biological parent of my younger sibling. I am now 19, and I've been dealing with the aftermath and suppressing the trauma ever since I was 15. When I was 16 or 17, I was sent to a mental hospital due to my suicidal thoughts. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened to me and how it could have been prevented. While in the mental hospital, I was sexually assaulted by another patient the day before I was discharged. This led to me almost being sent back due to the trauma. The following year, I was assaulted in my math class, and no one did anything about it. I started to believe that this was something that only happened to me. I graduated last month, but I'm still not over what happened. I've let a friend of my parents know that I'm still struggling with this. I still have nightmares, couldn't wear dresses until I was 18, hated sleeping in my bed, felt uncomfortable being naked, had flashbacks during sex, and felt resentment towards my younger sibling because of what their parent did to me. My parents asked if I wanted my abuser beaten up, and I said yes. Now, I'm scared because my sexual abuser is still in my sibling's life, not mine. I see him often, and this is what I feel is truly holding me back in this whole process. I feel so alone in this. I pressed charges as soon as I turned 18, and the whole process is still ongoing, taking longer than expected. I feel so guilty, hypervigilant, and afraid all over again. Because of this, my suicidal ideation has returned, and now everyone knows I'm suicidal. I'm leaving for college in the fall with my dog, and that's the only thing I'm looking forward to. Story: my boss fired 11 immigrants. I'm 22-year-old, and my uncle is 29-year-old. This may be too much for some people, so I advise people who have strong guts to continue to read my story. For the past couple of years, I've been having constant arguments and getting irritated every time I see with my mom. I still live with her since I'm in college right now, trying to finish my senior year. My graduation got delayed because of all the CPTSD and depression. I do see a therapist for my CPTSD, and I do have medications for my depression and ADHD, but I can't ever forgive my mom. I got essayed when I was around 10 by my uncle, who was around 17 and soon to be 18 that same year. It happened 4 times, 3 times being at home. The other time was on family vacation, when my mom invited him. It first started with him needing to see me, so he used my brother, 13M, to tell me I needed to go into my uncle's room because he needed to tell me something. I go to my uncle's room a lot with my brother to play Minecraft on his Xbox 360, so I thought it was a normal thing. My brother only did that because he got to play on his computer. Next thing you know, I was forced to give head to my uncle. I told him that I didn't want to, and he would say that he would never let me play on the Xbox again and would delete my world. As a kid, I spent a lot of time building things, and I got scared that all my hard work would go down the drain. I was hoping my brother would notice, but all he had on was his headsets and stared at the screen. It happened 2 more times until I didn't want to do it anymore. My breaking point was that I told my uncle I ate, and so I felt nauseous and he didn't care. He said that it was okay. I threw up, but I got scared to puke everywhere, so I swallowed my vomit. After that, he would tell me to go to the bathroom and spit it out. I searched on Google. Can you get pregnant swallowing semen? That's when I knew I didn't want to continue doing it any longer. I was introduced into pornography by my brother when I was 10, and he introduced me into pornography games. I didn't think of it as much as a bad idea until he got caught and got grounded by my parents. So, as all of this was happening, my inner thoughts thought that it was normal until I realized it's something that family did not do on a normal basis. When the Florida trip came, I do not remember if it was the same year or the year after all of the things happened. I was told that my uncle will join us in Florida 3 days after. I wasn't happy and got upset. The day he came, he acted normal until the night we had to sleep. The hotel, I remember it was Tiki Hiki, something like that. It had 2 bedrooms. One room had 2 beds. It was a small bed, twin, and it would be separated from the room from another. My parents and my little sister slept together in the other room. I slept in the same bed with my brother, and my uncle had the other bed that was near the door. As I was about to doze off, my uncle whispered, "Hey, come here." I was hoping it was my brother he was calling for, but my brother tapped on me annoyed and said, "He's calling for you, not me." I pretended that I didn't hear what my brother said until he said, "Just go, I'm trying to sleep," kind of attitude. I walked over and I said, "What?" My uncle told me to climb into his bed. I didn't want to, but I did because I was scared my brother would yell at me if I didn't let him sleep since my uncle kept asking for me. It was pretty late, around 11 p.m. He asked me, "Do you like lightsabers?" I said, "Yeah." He knew this because I would watch Star Wars on TV back at home. Then he said, "Do you want to touch my lightsaber?" I said, "What lightsaber?" He said, "Here," and he placed my hand on, you know what? I tried to end the conversation and hoping my brother would be awake, but he was dead asleep. He told me to jerk him off. After it was done, I was just in shock while he used the bathroom to clean himself up. I turned facing my brother and I wished I had got up to go back, but I didn't. I was in utter shock and was sad. When he came back, he put his thing between my thighs while I was facing my brother going back and forth, and at that moment, I got up and went to the other side. And I pretended to fall asleep. Nothing else happened after the trip, but I didn't know what just happened. I never told anyone, as I was told that if I told anyone, I wouldn't be able to play on the Xbox anymore. I told my friends in 6th grade, and they said whoa, but they never told me to report it to the police, and so I thought it was something that I had to get over with. Until 11th grade in high school, I was in a silly drama with a girl who always thinks I spread rumors about her when I didn't even know the rumors, or she just likes to blame everything on me. That's for another time. I got called into the office, and when they tried to say that I shouldn't be spreading rumors, rumor is that this girl was on Tinder and got essayed by someone she claimed she knew for a long time and got mad. I told my ex, who was my BF at the time, what happened, and he just so told people long after we broke up. I told them that it wasn't my problem, and the school counselor said, "You don't know what happens between these closed doors, especially even when families are around." I guess that sentence hit me pretty hard because I started to cry. The girl thought I cried because I got caught or something, and till this day she still thinks that. But besides that, the counselor told everyone to leave and asked what happened. I told them, and they told me that they had to call the police. I didn't go to the rest of my class that day. My uncle got arrested, and my parents came to ask what happened. They were told by police and the school. I never wanted to tell my mom specifically because I knew her response. My dad got really mad and demanded him to get out of the house and never come back. I went to live with my dad's parents for a bit while everything got sorted out. My mom would visit me and ask if I'm okay and why I never told her. This was when I thought my prediction about telling her was wrong. I was wrong. The meeting between my parents and the school took place for a couple of days. My mom looked at me and said, "This is wasting my time. I am missing work because of this." When we got called into the room, she told them, "He's only a child, my uncle. It shouldn't happen this way." Everything was a blur after I heard her repeatedly saying that sentence. I heard mumbling from the counselors. I thought my mom would be on my side. I was wrong. During the times she would come to see me at my grandparents', I would be in the car, and my mom would tell me, "He's family." When she was little, some older man tried to touch her, but she slapped his hand and she's over it. I looked at her and said, "That's not the same." She told me I should forgive him because he was a kid, and he even said sorry. I told her I didn't want to see her anymore and went back up to my grandparents'. My dad's parents didn't know what was happening except that I had to stay with them for 2 weeks. My mom never told anyone. I wish I did, but I didn't speak my language very well, so I never really knew how to bring it up with my broken language. After going to detectives after school and my parents taking time off work, My mom kept telling me she missed work and didn't have time for this. I got mad and told her she didn't have to come, she had to because she's my parent. The week after, she told me to drop the case. She said, "Don't trust these police or detectives. They're trying to ruin the family. You don't want him in jail, do you?" I looked at her shocked and said, "What do you mean?" She said, "If he goes to jail, the family is ruined." She tried to basically say that it'll be my fault. My grandma, Mom's side, will be heartbroken for the rest of her life. I was pressured into dropping the case. I wished that I had continued the case because ever since I didn't, my life had become harder. I was struggling to go to school, and I'd barely passed my classes during senior year. I graduated, but it was during when pandemic started. Every time I bring it up to my mom about it, she always tries to dismiss it. I've been talking to my therapist, I've gotten different therapists, but now I have the one I constantly go to once a week. How during college I had to withdraw classes every semester and I just didn't do good. I'm planning to report him again and finish the case. It's been kind of hard. After I dropped the case, my uncle invited me to his car, and I had to because my mom forced me. He apologized and hoped that everything would be fine in the future, and he was sorry that he did that to me. He was crying, but I was just not comfortable. I told his GF about it, and she was shocked and said, "I don't want to marry him if he had done this, because what if he does it to my kid also?" Point blank, she never left him and still is together with him. I'm glad it never happened to my sister because she was interviewed also by the detectives. But I'm also so alone that I have no one. My dad felt guilty since my grandma and mom begged my uncle to stay at the house. I've moved out of that house with my mom and sister. My dad visits occasionally, to a place near my school a couple of years later. My parents are deciding to move back to the house where everything happened, and I told them I can't. My mom doesn't understand that I will never forget, and she always invites him to family events, and I told her to stop, and she got upset and said the event isn't going to happen anymore. She stopped inviting him after a heated argument, and I told her I'm taking pills because of what she did and what he did to me. She told me to stop asking the pills. I never did, but she's so blind on what's happening, she keeps avoiding the topic, and whenever I see her I can't help but get mad. My mom didn't raise me, my grandparents did. She had me when she was young at 21 or 22. But she would always get me what I wanted. Even so, I can never be the same. I wanted to continue the case, and I realized that now I have limited time. My uncle plans to move out of state, across the country, next year. I feel pressured, and my mom kept telling me that I need to stop talking to her with an attitude. Of course I can't. Edit, the same year the case got dropped. My mom decided to buy him a birthday gift a couple of months later. Story, my creepy stepdad wants me to twerk in front of him. Me, 19F, and my stepdad, 48M. I really don't know what to do. I want to tell my mother, but I'm scared. 1 year ago, my mother escaped a bad relationship with my biological dad, who was abusive all my life, and then she found my stepdad. Let's call him Jeff. I grew up liking dancing. Having taken some classes, I could say I'm pretty good at it. Usually, when I'm comfortable around people, I dance. I like doing this one dance with my mom and sisters that kinda looks like I'm twerking from the back. I do not do that type of dance in front of men, so please do not say I was doing it on purpose in front of him. My stepdad did not know about that dance, or he didn't. 4 weeks ago, I was dancing with my little sister to some music while doing chores. No boys were around, and it was just me and my little sister, so I did the dance. I did not see my stepdad walking into the house from the back door, not until my sister stopped dancing, and I looked behind me to see Jeff standing there. I instantly stopped, obviously embarrassed, and my sister and I went back to doing chores. That is not what I found creepy, but what I found really creepy and inappropriate was when a day later he asked to talk to me in his room. I really didn't want to, but I just wanted it to be over and done with because I do not like him. Once he brought me to his room, he said blankly with a straight voice, "Why don't you dance like that in front of me?" I got really uncomfortable and left the room. Leaving the house with my car, I did not feel comfortable with him home alone, so I left and went to a friend's house. That wasn't the first time he did something really creepy. Another time was when I was taking a shower, and I heard a knock, so I yelled, "Yes." I did not hear anything, so I peeked my head from the shower only to see the doorknob trying to be opened. Luckily, it was locked. I knew it was him because after I yelled, "Stop," he had the audacity to say, "Why is the door locked?" Like, what the actual fuck? What do you think? After that, I told my mom about it, saying she needs to set boundaries or I am leaving and going no contact. I know that was a little dramatic, but I do not give a flying shit. He did so many creepy things to me, and my mom does nothing about it. The reason I'm scared to tell her is because she genuinely loves this dude, and I hate to be the reason she can't find love. I'm sorry for the end. I'm not good at English, and I'm really not wanting to talk about this because I'm still trying to recover from him asking me that and the previous things he's been doing. Right now, I'm staying at my grandma's. Story: My abuser will get hurt, it's all my fault. My name is Lily, I'm a 19-year-old female. I was sexually abused from the age of 8 until I was 13 years old. I told my parents when I was 15, and they confronted my abuser, who is the biological parent of my younger sibling. I am now 19, and I've been dealing with the aftermath and suppressing the trauma ever since I was 15. When I was 16 or 17, I was sent to a mental hospital due to my suicidal thoughts. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened to me and how it could have been prevented. While in the mental hospital, I was sexually assaulted by another patient the day before I was discharged. This led to me almost being set back due to the trauma. The following year, I was assaulted in my math class, and no one did anything about it. I started to believe that this was something that only happened to me. I graduated last month, but I'm still not over what happened. I've let a friend of my parents know that I'm still struggling with this. I still have nightmares, couldn't wear dresses until I was 18, hated sleeping in my bed, felt uncomfortable being naked, had flashbacks during sex, and felt resentment towards my younger sibling because of what their parent did to me. My parents asked if I wanted my abuser beaten up, and I said yes. Now, I'm scared because my sexual abuser is still in my sibling's life, not mine. I see him often, and this is what I feel is truly holding me back in this whole process. I feel so alone in this. I pressed charges as soon as I turned 18, and the whole process is still ongoing, taking longer than expected. I feel so guilty, hypervigilant, and afraid all over again. Because of this, my suicidal ideation has returned, and now everyone knows I'm suicidal. I'm leaving for college in the fall with my dog, and that's the only thing I'm looking forward to. Story: Losing a best friend. This is a true story. It was the year of 2002. I was 12 years old in the 7th grade at the time. My best friend Chris lived 2 doors down from me. Chris and I frequently hung out nearly every day since the 6th grade. We technically didn't know each other long, but you would have thought we knew each other our whole lives. We were best friends and nothing could change that. Or so I thought. Every morning before school I would head over to Chris's house for video games. This was a ritual. I would try to make it over there early so we had ample time to play Halo Combat Evolved before the bus picked us up. He had his Xbox set up in the basement of the house, which was nice because it avoided the dysfunction of Chris's home. Chris's dad was an extreme alcoholic. A violent one at that. He was completely unpredictable and would lash out without warning. Whether it be verbally or physically. He was sort of a monster. My mother would frequently allow Chris and his mother to stay with us overnight if a fight ever got out of hand. Unfortunately, it did a lot. Chris's mom had a great job with the government. She was the nicest lady I had ever known outside of my own family. She was a second mom to me. I was over there so much she would even be sure to stock the fridge with my favorite soda. Vanilla Coke. She was incredibly thoughtful and just the sweetest person. Now to Chris's dad. Besides what I've already told you, he didn't work. In fact, I never saw him really do anything besides lie on the couch, watch TV, and drink. He also yelled a lot. But didn't contribute anything to the family other than chaos, it seemed. Other than the Xbox being in Chris's basement, Chris's uncle also lived down there. He was awesome. He didn't mind how loud we got, and he was always there to talk to us about our problems. He was the cool uncle. Whenever he wasn't home, Chris and I would find one of his cigarettes and go smoke one. He caught us one time and laughed. He told us he didn't want us doing that though, and did give us a lecture. But didn't get us into any kind of trouble. It's shocking that this uncle is Chris's dad's brother. They were complete opposites in every way. One morning before school I entered directly into Chris's basement. Across the basement I can see Chris playing video games as usual. Before I can even shut the back door behind me, Chris says, "I'm not going to school today." I walked over to Chris and immediately knew why. Chris had a black eye and a swollen lip. He turns off the video game and explains what happened. As we sat there, Chris explained what his father did to him. Chris finished with saying that he hated his dad. I did too. I loved Chris as a brother and hated seeing him this way. That's when I had this idea. I told Chris this idea and he smiled. It felt really good seeing him smile even under the circumstances. He thought the idea was hilarious. We always were pranksters and he agreed that this would be a perfect way to get back at his dad. We immediately started on the idea. We didn't have much time before the bus came, so we had to act fast. We went into Chris's uncle's room and began finding the items we needed. A pair of shoes, socks, underwear, and to finish it all off, one of Chris's uncle's condoms. The idea consisted of placing these items under the bed where Chris's mom slept upstairs. Basically making it look like the uncle and mom were having an affair. Chris's dad slept on the couch every night and never really went up there except maybe for a shower and a change of clothes. Once we had the items we needed, one of us had to covertly run these items upstairs and put them where they needed to be. Under Chris's mom's bed. Chris got cold feet. He didn't want to risk getting caught. He begged me to do it. Chris argued that his dad couldn't do anything to me if I got caught because I wasn't his kid. I wasn't buying that, but I agreed anyway. I tiptoed right next to Chris's passed out drunk dad on the couch and made my way upstairs. It was easy. Chris's mom had already left for work. I placed the socks into each shoe with a crumbled pair of boxers. I opened the condom and threw it under the bed beside the shoes. Perfect. Mission complete. We then went to school and found ourselves sort of forgetting about it. A week went by and still nothing had happened. I finally remembered to ask Chris about it one afternoon. He said his guess was it wasn't found yet. We laughed about it and that was it. The next morning before school, I went straight to Chris's back door and it was locked. Strange. He always left it unlocked for me. I went around to the front of the house and most of the cars were gone. I went back home to tell my mom. She tells me to go to the bus stop on my own and maybe Chris had a doctor's appointment or possibly something came up. She didn't have a clue. Chris never came to school that day. After school I went back over to Chris's house. Again nobody was home. I started shooting hoops on his basketball hoop while waiting for him. Eventually a truck does pull up in the driveway. It was Chris's uncle. Chris's uncle got out and quickly jogged around the house toward his bedroom. I said hello, but he completely ignores me. That's when I realized Chris was in the truck too. He immediately tells me to just go home. I start to tell him about how his uncle just ignored me. But he interrupts me again. Just go home, please. I then asked him what was going on. Chris tells me that his uncle and him were only at the house briefly to pick up some clothes and would be heading right back to the hospital where his mother lied in a coma. With tears in his eyes, he explains how his dad found the condom and everything else. It started everything. He was drunk and had a complete mental breakdown. He accused the mom of an affair and tried to kill her. He strangled her till she was unconscious. He beat her very badly. Then continued the beating by stomping her unconscious body into a bloody pulp of a mess. He only stopped the vicious beating momentarily to pour an accelerant on her to try and burn her body. Apparently, by that time, the uncle had intervened and stopped him before the burns were that bad. Chris then called 911 while his uncle restrained the father. The rest is history. I told him how sorry I was that this happened. I didn't know what else to say at the time. I tried to hug him, but he pushed me away. I was shocked about what had happened. I still couldn't believe it. Who would have thought a harmless prank could end like this? I told my mom all about what happened and cried about it for some time. After about a week, Chris finally came back to school. But things were never the same between us. Just a nod in the hallways turned into absolutely nothing. I didn't exist to him anymore. We never spoke as best friends again. I think a part of him still blamed me. It was my idea after all. Chris's mom did survive. After recovering from burns, a collapsed lung, lacerations, broken bones, and many surgeries later, she eventually recovered and met someone who treats her like a queen. She got remarried to this man. She is still as beautiful as ever and continues to stay in touch with my mother to this day. Chris's dad is still in prison as far as I know. May he rot there. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.